It was the best kind of day at Willow Creek Farm, the kind that smelled like sunshine and ripe strawberries. And today was especially exciting because it was almost time for the annual Strawberry Festival, when the whole town would come to pick fresh berries and enjoy the farm's delicious food. Inside the cozy farmhouse kitchen, a huge pot of berries bubbled over the stove while Grandpa Joe taught Tommy and Ella how to make jam. He stirred the mixture with a big wooden spoon, his face crinkled in concentration. "Now you gotta watch it close," he said. "You don't want it to stick and burn, or you lines have lumpy jam, and no one wants that." But then suddenly, Milo the chocolate lab puppy, who was licking his own paws nearby, got a little too close. Woof! He barked as the spoon smacked him right in the nose. He shook his head, sending strawberry goop flying everywhere. Tommy and Ella burst out laughing as Milo shook himself dry, but Grandpa Joe just pretended to be mad. "Easy now, you big lug," he said, chuckling. "You're supposed to stir it, not paint the dog with it." After their jam-making lesson, Ella wiped her sticky hands on a nearby apron. "Why do we have to use these old jars, Grandpa?" she asked, eyeing the mismatched collection sitting on the table. Some were cloudy, some had faded labels, and some looked downright mysterious. "Ah, these jars have been in this family longer than my beard," he said. "Who knows what's hiding in them?" As Ella picked up one of the oldest ones, something plopped into the jam. "Ooh, what is that?" she cried. She pulled out a small rolled-up piece of paper, sticky with strawberry goop. Tommy gasped. "Is that a treasure map?" he asked. Sure enough, the faded parchment was covered in tiny markings and sketches, including pictures of tall trees, a winding river, and a cool treehouse marked with a big X the bottom corner read, "Where two rivers meet under the whisper tree, a special treat will wait for you and me." Grandpa Joe paused his stirring and studied the map for a moment, his face suddenly serious. "Well, I'll be," he said finally. "That looks like the Whisper Tree House near the creek. But that place is so overgrown. No one's been near it in decades." "Then let's go find it," Ella said with a grin. "But won't we need a boat to cross the river?" Tommy asked, pointing at the picture on the map. "We sure do," Grandpa Joe said, scratching his chin. "And I think I just might have one in the barn." After loading up into the old rowboat, the kids started rowing toward the other side of the creek, with Milo paddling alongside in the water. Soon, they reached the bank and followed a trail through the tall grass and wild flowers until they saw it. Hidden behind thick vines and weeds was an old wooden treehouse. A shiver ran down Ella's spine. "Whoa," she whispered. "This place looks like it hasn't had a visitor since the dinosaurs," Tommy laughed. "And maybe they left those vines to keep it all to themselves." But now it's our turn. Together, they pushed aside the overgrown foliage, climbed the rope ladder, and walked onto the moss-covered porch. A rusty sign hanging beside the door read, "Beware of squirrels," but when they opened the door, they found nothing but dust and cobwebs. As the kids explored further, they saw broken rocking horses, old dull furniture, and stacks of yellowed books. Then, in the corner, they spotted something strange. Carved into the wood were a bunch of weird symbols, like the mark the Scarecrow had made on the ground. Tommy gasped. "Do you think they're connected somehow?" he asked. Sure enough, if he turned the book just so, the pages matched the drawing on the wall perfectly. So the treehouse was definitely part of the secret club, but what did it mean? And where was the special treat mentioned in the map? Suddenly, the floor creaked beneath Ella's feet and a loose wooden panel flipped open. Startled, she bent down and peeked inside. To her surprise, there was a small metal box with a keyhole in the center. But before either of the kids could try the key from the Scarecrow, a loud thump came from outside. "Who's there?" Tommy shouted. Just then, a large gray squirrel popped its head through the window. It glared at them for a moment, then scurried away. "So sorry," the squirrel said from outside. Don't blame me for being territorial. It's my tree, and I've been guarding it ever since that wooden monster moved in." The kids smiled at each other. They hadn't been scared at all, but what did the squirrel mean by wooden monster? And what was its connection to the treehouse? Tommy decided to take a closer look around. On a shelf, he found an old journal and carefully opened it. Inside, he found detailed drawings of the treehouse and its surroundings, along with stories about adventures and discoveries. The entries were filled with excitement, laughter, and friendship. The journal showed how much fun the secret club members had playing in the woods, building treehouses, and solving mysteries. But then Tommy noticed something else. Hidden between the pages were pressed flowers and leaves, including a pressed strawberry leaf. "Look," he called to Ella. "There's a drawing of the whisper tree, and here's a real one pressed inside the journal." He looked closely at the map again. If this was the whisper tree, then that meant this river wasn't real either. It was just a picture. Tommy realized that the map wasn't guiding them to a physical location. It was describing a path through the woods, but which one? Just then, a twig snapped in the bushes, and they heard a familiar voice. "What are you kids doing in here?" The kids froze. Was it the scary wooden monster? They had never seen him before. He wore a big brown coat and a wide-brimmed hat. Nothing," Tommy lied quickly. "We were just taking a break from building our treehouse." The man narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Treehouse. He took a step closer. "Well, that sounds like fun, but I'm afraid you'll have to do it somewhere else. This tree means a lot to me, and I don't want anyone climbing it." Before the kids could respond, he turned around and disappeared into the bushes. "Wait," Ella called after him. "Are you the one who drew these?" She held up the journal. He stopped, hesitated, then replied softly, "Maybe." The man didn't seem so scary after all. In fact, he was probably the one who had left the map in the jam jar. So why didn't he want them to climb his tree? Whatever it was important to him. But the man was gone now, and the kids had a mystery to solve. It was time to get started, but first, they needed a snack. Ella pulled some apples from her bag, and the three of them munched quietly on the porch. Then, just as they finished, the sound of crunching leaves made them turn around. The gray squirrel from before stood on the ground below, holding out a nut. It looked at the kids expectantly. Thanks," Tommy said slowly. "But we don't really like nuts." The squirrel tilted its head in confusion. "You don't?" it asked. "But I thought everyone liked nuts. That's why I brought you extra." "Here, have one." Ella reached out to take the nut, and as their fingers met, she felt something cold and hard in her palm. Quickly, she pulled away and dropped it in her bag. It was a small metal key. The kids stared at each other, their eyes wide with surprise. The journal, the map, the whispering tree, the wooden monster, and now the key. It was clear that the scarecrow riddle and the treehouse were connected, but how? And what did the key unlock? Suddenly, Ella remembered the last line from the map. Return by the end of the strawberry day. The sun was already dipping below the horizon, and the sky was turning from blue to purple. She turned to Tommy and whispered urgently. The map said to return by sunset. "We have to go now." Rushing down the ladder, they raced back the way they had come. And when they reached the creek, they knew exactly where they needed to go. Behind the orchard sat the old stone fountain that only filled with water after rain. The kids ran toward it, and as they approached, they saw that it had filled up overnight. Then they noticed something else. There was a small crack in the base, and sticking out from it was the end of a metal key. With trembling hands, Tommy removed the rest and fitted into the lock. As he turned it, a section of the fountain wall slid open, revealing a hollow space inside. And at the bottom sat a small, intricately carved wooden box tied with a faded red ribbon. Together, the kids sat on the grass while Milo held playfully at the moon. "So, what do you think is inside the box?" he asked. As Tommy cut the ribbon, a gentle breeze rustled through the nearby trees, carrying with it the faint scent of strawberries.